Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Bruton Hunter, and I work in the policy office at the National Science Foundation. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to another session of the NSF Virtual Grants Conference. I'm now pleased to announce this session, which will cover proposal submission logistics for their Faculty Early Career Development Program, or CAREER. And this session will be presented by Stephanie Yee, who is the IT Specialist in Division of Information Systems. Take it away, Stephanie.
So welcome to the Faculty Early Career Development Program, CAREER, Proposal Submission Logistics webinar. So my name is Stephanie Yee, and I'm one of the project managers here at NSF that oversees the Research.gov system, the FastLink systems, and the Grants.gov integration piece. My primary role is on maintenance and operations, so I'm the person that deals mostly with IT Help Central and help communicate any issues with the developers. This is my contact information, and I'm part of the Division of Information Systems. So today we have an action-packed agenda. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about how the submissions can work between Research.gov and Grants.gov. I will go over some key milestones that you need to keep in mind to make sure you're able to submit the proposal on time. I'll highlight some of the major changes that we've made since last year, especially regarding the NSF approved formats for some of the sections. I'm going to spend most of my time at the demo, so hopefully you'll be able to see screen by screen some of the sections that you'll be filling out and how those compliance checks work. I'll go over some reminders and how to check proposal status at the end and some resources that will be helpful to you. So career proposals can be submitted in two systems at NSF, Research.gov and Grants.gov. The solicitation number is 22586, and a reminder that the proposal deadline is 5 p.m. local submitters time. So this is on Wednesday, 5 p.m. A common question about 5 p.m. local submitters time, what does that really mean? This means 5 p.m. the time of your institution. So everyone applies to a proposal at NSF. You are submitting on behalf of your organization. The organization is applying for that grant. If your organization is located in New York, your local time is Eastern time. If the person is located in California, you're still beholden to the Eastern 5 p.m. time. So proposals submitted through Grants.gov and Research.gov are beholden to the PAPG guidelines. And over here on the left-hand side, there are links to the PAPG, and there are links to the NSF.gov application guide. We highly recommend that you review the proposal submission timeline document. So this is a document that is referenced in the solicitation. It is a PDF document that lists very clearly some of the milestones that you should be looking at when preparing your proposal. The second bullet is just to remind everyone, proposals submitted after the deadline will not be accepted and will be returned without review. This is a very important guideline. I highly recommend. I will take a look, open this up for you. This is not just useful for career solicitations. It is also important for all NSF solicitations. The guidelines are very similar. I'm not going to go over these. I will be going over this in detail in the presentation. This gives you a very good guideline posted at your desk of approximately X days before the deadline date, what items you should be looking at and making sure that there's no problems here. So I highly recommend that people look at this very carefully. So I'm going to go over now what things you need to have in place before you even begin your application for NSF. So account management. If you are completely new to NSF, you have more milestones to complete. If you are part of an organization that's completely new to NSF, so that may not apply to most of you. Most of you are belonging to an organization that has done business with NSF. But if you're not, and you're not applying to career, or maybe this doesn't apply to you, your organization must be registered in SAM.gov. This is a federal-wide requirement. So your organization, if you are in this boat, at a minimum, I know this is 5 weeks, but I even say be conservative as soon as possible. Make sure your organization is registered in SAM.gov and you have an active UEI number. So at least 5 weeks, I would say more as soon as today. For administrators, these are just more milestones for you, just to make sure, you have to be very diligent about making sure the SAM.gov registration process is moving along thoroughly. It is a baseline requirement for you to get a proposal into Research.gov. All right, I'm going to go into the proposal preparation features and the demo. So these are just some key highlights I want you to notice. So we are trying to build these pages to be a lot more user-friendly and to have help on the page that's relevant for that particular section. So this little blue icon, so it looks like an eye with a blue circle around it. These are what I call blue eye info buttons. They're not buttons, but if you hover your mouse over them, they will pop up relevant business rules about that section or explaining what that section might mean. So this is useful because you don't have to wonder what a particular section is looking for. It will tell you exact guidance either from the PAPG or maybe technical guidance for that particular section. I find them very useful. Also, the file uploads are pretty quick. So if you are a legacy Fastlane user, you might be pleasantly surprised how quickly these file uploads occur in this system. And I want to highlight, we have definitely enhanced the compliance checking for all of these sections. We're checking approximately 180 compliance checks for these proposal sections, and we are trying to make sure the warning messages and error messages are actionable. The last bullet is just for your information for PIs of images, graphics, those types of visual items are not altered during the uploads. We keep the resolution intact, so they are pristine and crisp. All right, so I'm about to jump into the demo. I'm going to move from the PowerPoint presentation to a browser. And I'm going to go over some of the highlights of preparing a proposal, very basic. So I'm going to go through the proposal wizard, let you see the proposal main page, and go through some of the sections that's relevant for career, but also just give you a high level of how each section works. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen to the demo. All right, so now we're on the Research.gov Prepare New proposal screen. This is on demo, so I know I'm not creating real production data. I'm going to go ahead and click on Prepare New, or you can click on this down arrow button, and this will show you a list of things that you can create. I'm going to go ahead and create full proposal. And then you're going to be prompted, in case you have more than one organization affiliation, a list of organizations you're going to be applying under. So for here, I have more than one. I have National Science Foundation, and here I once applied as a fellow. So just be careful of that. Select which organization you'll be applying, and then select continue. All right. So now I'm on my wizard, and I have 4 steps before I'm able to create the proposal to work on. The first thing you're going to do is select funding opportunity. And here you can select, you can enter a number, or you can enter by name. As you type in, the list is going to be reduced. And I'm going to go ahead and select this and click next. Step 2 is where to apply. This is where your proposal is going. So for most people, it's just going to be one program here at NSF, but you might have 2. And I'll show you later on how to add additional units of consideration. All right, I'm going to go ahead and select a random program, click Save, and click Next. Step 3 is proposal type. You'll be selecting research. Step 4 is proposal details. So for the career solicitation, separately submitted collab proposals are not allowed. So I'm going to just go ahead and select single proposal with or without sub-awards. So for the career solicitation, this applies for any solicitation. Double check to make sure there's title requirements, or maybe there's not title requirements. For career, you must start your proposal with career, and then you can enter your title afterwards. Go ahead and click Prepare Proposal. All right, my proposal is temporarily created. Everything I answered in the wizard is up here at the top. So this is what I call the proposal header. This is where my title is, funding opportunity. Make sure this is correct. Everything you answered in that wizard is set. The only two things you can change at this point is the title and adding additional where to apply. So here for the title, if you wanted to change it after the fact, you can click on this edit button, and then this will turn into a text field here. Where to apply? So right here, I selected linguistics as my primary program, but what if my proposal crosses disciplines and I want other places at NSF to consider my proposal? You can click Manage Where to Apply. This will take you to the Manage Where to Apply screen where you have the option of adding other programs to your proposal. This, I want to also explain clearly what this means. Your proposal is going only to here, to linguistics, wherever you have in selection 1. Any other programs you add on this page is going to be printed on the cover sheet as information for the program officer on whether or not they will have that proposal be considered at other places at NSF. It is a request. It is not a guarantee. So just be purposeful on who or what you select over on the right-hand side. So here, so the funding opportunity has already pre-selected a lot of the programs at NSF. I just recommend that you select that and then go ahead and select your secondary program. So I'll go ahead and select some random programs here. There's no limit on how many you can add, but I do recommend, just from speaking with some program officers, it's not very useful to add 10 of them. So just be, again, purposeful on what you're adding here. So I added a couple here over on the right-hand side. So if you can see what I have first, second, third, and fourth is just the order that I added them. You can use the arrow buttons here to change the order of preference of the program. So for example, if I wanted instead biological anthropology to be higher, I can go ahead and click this arrow button and increase the priority to that. So as you can see, I moved it all the way to place number 1, and now that is where the proposal is going to. If I change my mind, I can go ahead and delete that, or I can move it down. So I'm moving this down, and maybe I need to delete this. So this is a really easy way to manage where to apply here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save and return to proposal. So right now I added a couple more. If you added a lot in this list, all that's going to do is, so your cover sheet only has a limited amount of space. It will list the ones as it can fit, and then anything extra is going to be printed on the 3rd page of your cover sheet. All right, so I'm going to kind of orient you to the page. I'm going to make this a little smaller. So we just went over the header. On the upper right-hand side is your due date. So it's required. Just make sure that is selected. A lot of times people miss that. And then on the left-hand side is your proposal action. So this is all the things you can do with your proposal. This is where you're adding your people. This is where you would be routing, printing, deleting, those types of actions to your proposal. On the right-hand side, in the main section, are your sections. So the sections are broken up into 2 sections, required and optional. So it's required is what it sounds like. You must have a file in each of these sections. The only caveat is maybe postdoc mentoring plan that is conditionally required depending on your budget. And then optional is down here. So read your solicitation carefully. Each solicitation is different at NSF. Some will specify required documents down here, but it will always remain in the optional because the PAPG requirements are, these are required and these are optional. So just make sure you read the solicitation carefully. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with proposal actions because what I always recommend for people as they're starting out their proposal is to do 2 things. 1 is to share your proposal, and 2 is to add your people. It's hard, not hard, but it's just more work for you if you waited till the last minute to add people, just because when you add people, it does impact and pre-populate the sections of your proposal. So I always recommend get your people set up first. So the first thing I'm going to do is click on Share Proposal. So the only person that can create a proposal is the PI. No one else can create a proposal. You must have a PI role. So I just click on this button. I know you might see a lot of error messages. That's because we just started on this proposal. I'm going to go click on Change Proposal Access. By default, a proposal is only viewable by the person who created it. So here you can see proposal is not shared. Make this a little bigger. You, as the PI, can select View Only Access or Edit Access. Please make sure you select Allow Proposal Submission. This will allow the AOR office to submit the proposal. Go ahead and click Save Proposal Access. Once I do that, it's going to send an email to everyone in the AOR office that this proposal is shared and they can now access and edit that proposal. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main screen and go again to my actions and to manage my personnel and subawards. So here is listed by default, of course, the prime organization. If you have other subawardees, you can add them here. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to stick to my prime organization. Manage personnel. So this is where you add your people to your proposal. There's 3 types of people you can add to your proposal. 2 are what I consider they're on the proposal, and the third is it is someone that can work on your proposal, but they're more of a personnel. They're administrative. They are there to help you with your proposal. So here at the top, you can add co-PIs or other senior personnel. For the career solicitation, you should not be adding co-PIs. So even though this button is here, don't click on that. But for other solicitations, of course, that option is available to you. I'm going to click on Add Other Senior Personnel. So for Add Senior Personnel, there's 2 different ways you can add people here. You can add them by NSF ID or by their email address, or you can add them by personnel name. Other senior personnel do not need to have roles for the organization. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a test user here. So I went ahead and add other senior personnel, and you'll see in other sections how that person is automatically populated in those sections. Down here is other authorized users. So this is somebody who does not necessarily have roles at your organization, but it is somebody that has access to edit your proposal. So this might be another student or another staff member at the university. So you just click on Add Other Authorized User. So what we will ask for you is the NSF ID or the email address. So I can go ahead and see if I can add another authorized user. And here, if the number is found, you'll see a list of their names and their organization, and you pick who you want to add. So one thing to note, which is a quirk of this page, you cannot have a person with the same first name, last name on the proposal. So for example, if I had added George here as my other senior personnel, it will give me an error message and say there is a duplicate of a person here on this page. I would say the easiest thing to do, especially if they're senior personnel, is just to make sure that there is a difference between the first name or last name. And that's really easy to do by just adding an initial, perhaps a middle initial to the first name, or you can add a prefix such as doctor. That's an example of how you can overcome the duplicate. All right, so this other authorized user has a lot of power. They can edit the proposal, they can delete the proposal. So just make sure who you add here is who you want. All right. All right, so now we're back to the main proposal screen. I'm going to go over to some of the highlights of the proposal sections that's specific to the career deadline. I'm going to go really quickly over cover sheet. So for the cover sheet, it's pretty straightforward. You need to select a start date, but for the career solicitation, it is at 5 years or 60 months. So go ahead and enter that. The system is not going to validate if you do something other than 60 months. So just be mindful what you enter here. At the bottom, I want to highlight some usability items that you might experience in this other information checkbox section. So each of these checkboxes are unique, meaning if you click on one, it might change the form a little bit and you have to enter different information. So I'm going to show you an example for live vertebrate animals. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And it's going to prompt you, or there's different questions depending on what you check. So I'm going to click on approved and another form field will pop up and you have to enter. You know, depending on your browser, this might not look the same. So just know that some of these do have different form fields as you check them. All right, let's go ahead and uncheck that and save it. All right. So once you save a section, you're always stay in this section and you have to go back. So there's two ways to do that. You can do the left-hand side navigation. So here, as you can see, we broke up the left navigation by each of the sections. So you can actually just keep clicking down the list and working on each section, or you can use the breadcrumbs up top. So these are nice little breadcrumb links where wherever I'm navigating, it starts populating. I can go back to the main page here. So I just updated the cover sheet. As you can see, this section it starts to change. The last updated field is updated to the timestamp that this was updated. And then on the compliance status, you'll see the text and an icon updating. So if it's all good, it's going to be a green check mark. If there's a warning, there's going to tell you there's a warning. If there's a problem, you're going to see a big X there. So it's really good for administrators to visually scan here just to see what is missing or what needs to be worked on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on project description just because it's a pretty heavy section with a lot of compliance checks. So this section, the page limit is 15 pages. If you are applying for other solicitations at NSF, that page count might vary. So just make sure that is checked. So this section must have a separate section header called broader impacts that must be properly spelled, and it must be on its own line with no other text to it. So that's what a header means. It doesn't, it can't have a sentence starting right afterwards. It has to be by itself. There is tolerance to allow for numbering. So if you are using numbers or Roman numerals, that is allowable, but I would say just be careful just because if you are using a lot of Roman numerals, and if you are centering the text, you might have extra characters that starts to count against the compliance check. So just be careful with that. Make sure you're not going to get an issue with this. The PAPG has font margins and line spacing requirements, so just remember you're beholden to those. From a technical standpoint, this page is not checking for fonts and margins, but that only means once the proposal gets to NSF, we will be checking it manually. So just make sure that you know and adhere to all the font and margin requirements. And again, if you're here on this page and you're like, well, what are those requirements? I want to know. On the upper right-hand side, on each of the proposal sections, there are what I call helpful links. So there is a link to the PAPG and there's a link to the solicitation that you're applying for. So you know at all times what you're applying for. And if you want help for a particular section, you can click on this link and we will take you to the exact PAPG chapter that applies to. All right. The last thing that this checks that a lot of people get tripped up on are URLs. So this section cannot contain URLs in any shape or form. It cannot be a clickable link. It cannot be an image with a link in it. It cannot have text that has www or HTTP to it. Even though that's text, it's not clickable, but it has those URL markers on them. So just be mindful of that. This is something that kind of unexpectedly gets people at, really close to the deadline. I highly recommend that once you even get a working draft of this document, upload it just to see what issues you're getting. That's really a really good tip for everyone to just make sure that is being constantly checked. Your technical limitations are this. I hope this doesn't affect you, but it should not be larger than 10 megabytes. All right. Go ahead and move on to the next section. I'm going to go to budget. So for your budget, I'm going to go ahead and click on National Science Foundation here. So this is your budget. One thing I find helpful is to hide the left-hand side navigation, just because the budget can get pretty long. So as you can see, any people I've added will automatically get inputted to the budget. So my other senior personnel test user here is here automatically. So this is why I recommend adding your people first before you start working on your section. So for here, just go ahead and add some random dates, numbers. So the people you add to your proposal don't necessarily need to be on your budget. So we get a lot of questions where this person can't take a salary, so I want to remove them. Do I have to, or can I upload their documents still? The answer is yes. The people on your budget have nothing to do with the people on your proposal. I hope that makes sense. So for this demo purpose, I'm going to remove test user. This person is not getting any money. So I'm going to click on, in case you missed it, manage. Click on test user, and I'm going to remove this person from my budget completely. So this will remove the person for all years on the budget, and they are never to be seen again. So this budget is, I would say, a really nice dynamic budget. So as you enter dollar amounts, this upper right-hand corner will update accordingly. And we do validations within the fields as well. So if I'm entering invalid characters, we're going to tell you right away. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click save. Oh, and again, if you have personnel, you have to make sure that there's items there. I'm going to go ahead and ignore this warning. One thing to note, you can add years here. It's very convenient. You can copy years, etc. The solicitation says max 5 years. The system won't stop you necessarily, so just make sure you have the correct amount of years according to your solicitation. All right. So one common question I get is there a way for us to download the budget offline and work on it and then upload it? The answer is no. The reason was purposeful, just because this document has a lot of compliance check built in already to it. I know it looks pretty straightforward, but as you start applying for other solicitations or other proposal types at NSF, we built in a lot of business rules into that. So we want to make sure you don't have too much money in a budget depending on a particular proposal type. So it was purposeful because we want you to take advantage of all the compliance checks that we have to offer on the budget. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ignore this warning and just move on. So the next section I want to highlight is the senior personnel documents. So senior personnel document is important. It is required. You have 3 documents required per person. I'm going to go ahead and collapse all. You can see my test user here. So I removed this person from my budget, but they are still on the proposal. They are still listed as part of my proposal. You cannot remove them from this section at all without removing them from the proposal completely. So even though test user is not getting a budget, they are required to have the same documents. You can expand all as well. It works very similarly to the other page where you can see really, at a glance, which documents are filled in, which ones are not. I'm going to go ahead and start with current and pending support. As a reminder, BioSketch and current and pending support must be in an NSF approved format. And you have 2 versions of that, Science CV or the fillable PDFs. I strongly recommend you must use Science CV at some point in this calendar year. But as of today, you have 2 choices. I would say use Science CV just because from a production support standpoint, we get very, very, very few tickets with Science CV forms because they work almost immediately. The fillable PDFs are a little more challenging just because there are more than one way to fill out a fillable PDF. You can use a browser, you can use Adobe, you can use Foxit Pro, and not all of them behave the same. If I had to say which is best to use, I would use Adobe if you have it, maybe Chrome browser if you have it, but there's a lot of software out there that does not work. The ones that I do know that does not work all the time are Foxit Pro, some of these freewares. software. Dropbox has a PDF editor that I know does not work. And when I say it does not work, it overwrites some of the metadata. And we need that metadata in order to process this file correctly. So just be mindful. Again, test your files as much as you can to make sure that that's not happening to you. You don't want a situation where your file has been altered in a way you were not expecting, and then you have to find out at the last minute, you have to rebuild those files. So test your files, even though if they're not complete, just make sure that the formatting is good. I'm going to go ahead and upload a large current and pending support here. So the current pending support, if you use the fillable form, is 27 pages long. It's pretty long. We will trim that for you. We will trim blank pages for you. But again, double check that the trimming happened. Make sure it's not over trimming or under trimming. That does happen because of how you are filling out the form. I would say if you find that it's not trimming the blank documents, it's probably because you're printing the PDF. So what I mean by that is sometimes people fill out the document and then they print to PDF. That just flattens the file completely, removes all the forms. We won't trim that. So just be careful of how you're filling that out. And again, if you test these files early enough, you'll be able to manage that well. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go back and go over the COA document. So this is a unique section. It is the only section in our proposal preparation system that requires an Excel document. I'll go ahead and click on this. So the major issues I am seeing with this is people don't have the right template. Maybe it's an outdated template, or maybe it's the completely wrong template. Make sure that the template is up to date. All right, so you can have, this is a link here that will take you to the information to the latest template. I'm going to go ahead and click Browse. I'm going to show you what the error messaging handling looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and upload a document that has invalid characters. So the validation on this form is pretty powerful. We will let you know which table the issue is at, what row, what column, and what we're expecting. So we do think this is helpful. Again, this form can be quite lengthy, depending on how many collaborations you've had. I recommend that you check this file pretty frequently, because any one invalid issue can cause a problem with the entire file. You can add rows, but you cannot make rows longer. So if something doesn't fit on a line, don't try to make the document longer. That's modifying the format. If we can't see it on the standard page paper size, we can't see it. The other major issues I'm seeing are people are modifying the document with Google Sheets. I understand that the old instructions did say Google Sheets was acceptable, but that was when Fastlane was in use. Right now, we're no longer using Fastlane. We're using Research.gov. It is expecting a file modified by Microsoft Excel. It will not work if you modified it in Google Sheets and moved it back to Excel. If it has ever been touched by Google Sheets, it is no longer usable. The easiest way for you to identify Google Sheets is if the headers look different, not on this screen, but if you open the document and it's native software and the text is black and the background is dark navy, then it's a sign for me to know that it's been modified in Google Sheets. All right, so I've uploaded a document and it's successful. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this just to preview what it looks like. Always check previews on all sections. Do not assume what you uploaded is what it is. Make sure you preview it. So here I uploaded a file, everything looks good. As you notice, most of these tables have a date field. So over here, last active date. The number one issue I'm seeing is people are entering things that are not valid dates. So if you're entering words like current or present, or if you're entering partial dates, so sometimes I'm seeing a year like 2016. That is not a valid date. We're expecting a month, day, and year. If you don't enter a valid date, it will cause the row to be blank. So this can be misleading, meaning if you're doing this really quickly, it may look good to you, at a glance, but you may not notice, oh, these 3 rows are completely blank. And that's because the date was blank or the date was invalid. So please review this carefully. This is a complex file. So it has complex rules to it. So just make sure this is looked at carefully. All right. So the next section I wanted to highlight is related to career is other supplemental documents. So as I mentioned, for the PAPG required sections, they're at the top, but then you have optional sections. So this will vary depending on solicitation. We will not check for these because these are optional, but for the career solicitation, you do have required documents and other supplemental documents. So this is easily missed because the system is not checking for it specifically, but the solicitation for career is checking for it at NSF. So click on other supplemental documents. This is I would say more of an open section. We're not checking much here. You can upload as many files as you like here. There's no limit. But for the career solicitation, you are expected to upload a 2-page departmental letter. I don't have a sample of a letter here, but I'm just going to go ahead and upload a random file. So one thing to note about letters, so this was a common issue from last year's round of solicitations. Letters come in many shapes and forms. A lot of times in the old days, it used to be a printed paper and someone scanned it with a signature. Now that Adobe has gotten more sophisticated, there's now variations of signatures. There's fill-in sign, there's DocuSign, there's certified signatures with PIV cards. There's a lot of security measures and lots of options of how signatures might look like on a letter. Just be careful. Our system is not capable of handling files with this type of specialness to it. So it cannot be password protected. It cannot be protected in any way. Our system will prevent an uploaded file with those attributes. You will know right away. So if you try to upload a file that's password protected, it'll tell you this file is protected. But if it has a certified signature or something more special along those lines, like DocuSign, it will also give you an error, but it's going to be generic. It's going to say there was a problem with this file. Call IT Help Central. I would say the first thing to check if you do see that, hopefully you're watching this, just remove the special signatures, and I'll tell you how to do this. It doesn't mean remove the signatures from the file. It means to reprint the file. So the easiest way to do this is to open the letter in a browser and then print to PDF. So that's the easiest way to remove all sorts of special codes on the signature, and then it will just look like a regular PDF with no special coding to it, and that will upload fine. Again, if you encounter it and you don't remember this presentation at all, if you call IT Help Central, they'll be able to walk you through that pretty easily. So again, I'm hoping you see a theme here of trying to test and upload your files often, even though it's not the final form. All right. So those are the highlights I wanted to show you in the particular sections themselves. I'm hoping the instructions are pretty straightforward for each of the sections. The next thing I would like to show you is just, if you need help filling out this form. I do want to point out the helpful links on the lower left-hand corner. We have helpful FAQs, videos. There's a whole slew of resources to help you navigate this system. I'm going to go ahead and show you some navigation to our help because it is not very intuitive, I would have to say. So I'm back to the home page. This is what you will see if you just logged in right here. On the upper right-hand corner, you have 2 links. There is a help link and an about link. If you want help on proposal submission, you're going to click on about. Once you click on about, you'll get a list of Research.gov services. Click on proposal preparation and submission. Bookmark this page. This is the page that you want to access when you're preparing your proposal, not just for career, but for any proposal at NSF or any item you're preparing for NSF, letters of intent, prelim proposals, anything you like is going to be here. This is a huge resource of anything you ever wanted to know about submitting something to NSF. For career, I would say the most useful section to you is going to be proposal section, proposal upload. So if you look on the left-hand side, there's something called uploading documents. If you click here, you're going to see a whole bunch of FAQs here. You can expand and click on the plus button, and it'll tell you lots and lots of information that all you ever wanted to know in terms of uploading your documents. I highly recommend people bookmark this. This is quite useful. So one thing, just because it is here and it's very convenient that's shown to me here, LaTeX users. For LaTeX users, again, you can click on here and you will get a wonderful link to some of our resources for LaTeX users. This primarily impacts physics, mathematics, engineering, those types of population. This is quite useful here. All right, so I just went through a basic preparation steps. I hope that was very useful to you. So the deadline is at 5 p.m. local time. So that means not you as a person, but 5 p.m. your organization's local time. So if your organization is on the East Coast, that will be 5 p.m. Eastern time, regardless of where you as the person clicking the button are in the world. So the deadline's at 5 p.m. What if you submitted your proposal early and then you wanted to change a section? So you can. So up until 5 p.m. Wednesday on the deadline date, you can make changes to your submitted proposal. So I'm going to really quickly show you how that works. And it's quite simple. So right now I'm logged in on a test site. So this is no longer production. This is so I can show you how to update a submitted proposal. So I'll go ahead and click on prepare and submit proposal. I am logged in as a PI. So when you have a proposal and it's already submitted, it's going to be on this right-hand side view, update submitted proposal. I'm going to go ahead and click on proposal, full, find the proposal that you submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and click this test proposal I had already. This is already submitted. This is the sample of the proposal that you had. In order to submit an update, don't click on this section. This is just read only. Under proposal action, there's a button called update submitted proposal. This is what you're going to click on. And this will open a new draft of your proposal. And this is where you can start updating your sections. As you update each section, it's going to update, and you have to send a little description of why you're changing the proposal. And remember, as long as it's before 5 p.m. deadline date, you can make as many changes as you like. It will be automatically accepted. All right, I hope that was useful. And then if you decided you're not going to make a revision anymore, you can go ahead and delete the revision. It does not delete your proposal. All right. So that's all I wanted to show you on the demo site today. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up the browser and go back to the presentation. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the career proposal preparation milestones. So these next few slides are on that webpage that I mentioned earlier, where you can look at the suggested timeframes and submission timelines. So this is the timeline for this year. So I highly recommend that anyone that's an admin, just to make sure your SAM.gov registration is up to date and is current, it is not expired. Make sure we suggest 12 days before to make sure you have resolved any sort of SAM.gov registration issues. And that's the role of the administrator. For AORs, these are recommendations. These are not hard deadlines, but these are things that we recommend. So please take note of this. If you are planning to submit your proposal through Grants.gov or any sort of system to system, we highly recommend you submit this way in advance of the deadline. We're recommending 9 to 10 days because any proposals that go through that system must go through a series of validations, of checks, and it might take you multiple submissions in order for it to be accepted at NSF. As you saw through the demo in Research.gov, we're checking for a lot of things that's very specific to NSF requirements. Grants.gov is a website that is a federal-wide website that accepts proposals for all organizations. we can take those proposals, but those proposals may not necessarily have the same checks as NSF does. In fact, it does not have the same checks. So we have to do additional processing, additional checks, and you might have to make corrections to those before it gets to NSF. Just because you submitted a proposal successfully in Grants.gov, it does not mean it is successfully accepted at NSF. So build yourself extra time. I recommend multiple days to make sure you have those worked out. If you submit a Grants.gov proposal at 4:55 p.m., you will not have time to rectify any issues that are found. All right. We recommend 7 days before the deadline to submit your proposal through Research.gov. It is a lot of days. I know most people don't have that kind of time, but I highly recommend it. I always smile when I see proposals come in this early, and that's because you have time to fix your proposal if there are any issues found that you may not have encountered before. And of course, 5 p.m. local submitter time. This is a hard deadline. So this is a slide just touching upon expanding more details on Grants.gov submissions. I'm not going to go through everything that's listed here, but what I want you to take away is see this little arrow workflow chart. When you submit your proposal on Grants.gov, you're in this first box. This green box is where it is at NSF. Your proposal has to be at this green box by 5 p.m. deadline date. So as you can see, there's a lot of steps in between a proposal submitted in Grants.gov and at NSF, and you have to allow yourself extra time for that. So that's why we always recommend, I would say, at least a week before the deadline date so you can get through these steps. And this is more information about the Grants.gov process. You are expected to get at least 4 emails to let you know that a proposal has entered NSF. All right. The next slide is to check your proposal status. So how do I know my proposal is in and NSF can see it? This applies to anybody. So it's a very good practice for any business you do with NSF to make sure the proposal can be seen. So when you submit a proposal in Research.gov or in Grants.gov, there is some processes overnight before it is seen by program officers here at NSF. It's usually an overnight process. So I find just telling people, hey, the next day, go to proposal status and make sure you can find your proposal there. That is the most surefire way to know your proposal is here. So it is under proposal section. It's the last link called proposal status. If you do not see your proposal there, it is not with us, and call IT Help Central. All right, help desk reminders and system outages. All right, I keep drilling this to you. Deadline date is 5 p.m. If you need help with IT Help Central, call and open a ticket as soon as possible. Please don't wait till after the deadline and open a ticket. That doesn't tell us anything, doesn't tell program officers anything. You have to, as soon as you run into issues, call IT Help Central. Please don't wait until too late. Track your ticket number. Make sure you have that. Some issues don't have quick turnaround times. So some issues I've seen that people don't expect is maybe there's an issue with your account. We have issues where people have multiple NSF IDs, they need to be merged. That takes a couple of business days to fix. So if you did not log into Research.gov until one day before the proposal, you think you have a lot of time, you might have to go through an account reconciliation. So these are things, it's all outlined in the milestones for you to double check these milestones before deadline date. If you're using Science CV, just be mindful that they have slightly different hours than our NSF help desk. So these are the hours listed here. And again, program-related questions should be directed to career. System maintenance. People may or may not know NSF does routine maintenances every weekend at NSF. Some are larger than others, but please check our maintenance advisories. So Wednesdays before each weekend, we do post an advisory on our outage times. Sometimes they're very light, meaning there's only a couple hours of outage, and sometimes they're very long. Please plan accordingly. So the deadline's on a Wednesday, that previous Friday, that previous Saturday probably has an outage. And so you need to make sure and plan accordingly, and don't think you have all of Friday and Saturday to work on it. There might be a maintenance. So please double check that. All right, demo and training sites. So all of this is kind of a recap of everything you've seen in the demo. You have a demo site available to you. This is available to anyone with a valid NSF ID. You don't need to have a PI role. And this is just a summation of all the links that I've mentioned. Resource for LaTeX users, and then information that's throughout the presentation. And if you have feedback, go click on the orange feedback button. I highly recommend it. It's anonymous, so you can be as candid as you like. And this concludes my formal presentation here, and I want to thank you for your participation. And now we can open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. We've answered a bunch of questions as they were coming in. We realized there were quite a few program-specific questions submitted, in addition to questions on the submission process itself. We'll take the program-specific questions to the Career Coordinating Committee and send the responses to everyone registered for this session to get those questions answered for you. So Stephanie, in the meantime, I'll go ahead with a few questions now for you. Starting with, do subawards need to be registered in SAM.gov? And if so, would their registration take 5 weeks as well?
So for subawardees, you don't need a full registration on SAM.gov. So just to be clear, on SAM.gov, pretend you're a brand new organization, you go to SAM.gov, there are two things that could happen when you go there. You can put in your information, put in your address, the name of the company or name of the organization, and you would get a UEI number. That is the requirement for subawards. If you're not a subaward and you're a prime, you need a secondary step, and that's a full registration in SAM.gov. That is what takes 5 weeks. So for subawardees, your requirement is lower. You just need the UEI number. I would say, however, in the system, you have an extra step in order for your subawardee organization to be attached to a proposal. You have to manually add that. So once you get that UEI number, if you're in this boat, you're a subawardee, you need to call IT Help Central and say, I am a subawardee. I have a UEI number. I need to be added to the Research.gov system so my prime organization can find me and add me to the proposal. So I hope that's clear. It's a little muddled, I guess, for a subawardee. It's not as clear how that works, but you do not need a full registration in SAM.gov. You just need a UEI number. And your secondary step is you need to call IT Help to add your organization to NSF.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Since the proposal should be initiated and prepared by the PI in Research.gov, does that mean the PI should enter the budget forms as well? Or is there a way for departmental grant administrators to prepare this?
Yes. So most cases, you might have another staff member or someone on your team that's helping you fill out the budget. So you as a PI, by default, when you create the proposal, no one can see it. The first step you should do is share it with your AOR office, and you can grant them edit access. So at a minimum, you could do that very quickly. The AOR office would have the ability to access your proposal and fill out the budget if you need to. If you need somebody to have access to your proposal that's not part of the AOR staff at your institution, maybe it is a person, a staff member, maybe someone in the department. As long as they have a valid NSF ID, you can grant them other authorized user on that proposal. This is a role per proposal only. So if you have a colleague that you want to be able to work on your proposal, you have to add them to that proposal as an other authorized user. So that person can also edit and modify each section of your proposal.
Okay. Can you please clarify if co-PIs are allowed in a career proposal?
They are not. So for career proposals specifically, always look to the solicitation. But I'm reading it right now. No co-PIs are allowed on career proposals. And I do understand it was a little confusing because I did show that. We were hoping that this session would be helpful to other non-career applicants, but for career specifically, they are not allowed on this solicitation.
Okay. And another question. See, maybe if you can get this one, I don't know. Will Research.gov be updated for a research administrator to create a career proposal and Research.gov for a PI?
So at this point, if you only have an AOR role, no, you cannot create proposals. Only people with PI roles can create a proposal. An AOR can also have a PI role. So if you are an AOR and you need to be able to create a proposal, you just need to be granted the PI role for that institution, and you can have both. If the question is, can an AOR only person create a proposal? At this time, that is not a requirement that NSF has. So at this time, no.
Okay. And let's see, what are the special instructions for using Arial 10 for the project description?
All right. So Arial 10, there is on our About page. So if you remember, I showed if you go to the upper right-hand corner, there's an About page. On that page, if you go to the section called Uploading Documents, there is quite detailed instructions on how to bypass that. It is labor intensive. So for Microsoft Word, it automatically spaces the lines a little bit differently depending on if the text is within a paragraph versus after a header. So it takes a little bit of elbow grease to go into Microsoft Word and basically force the line spacing. So there is a way to overcome the warnings, but you need to put a little bit of work in it. You could experiment with other fonts. There are 2 other fonts in the PAPG, which is also a size 10 that you can use, which do not trigger these warnings. So that is another option if that is something you're not interested in doing. So just as a caveat, at IT Hub Central, we cannot tell you to just ignore the warning because the warnings will show if there truly is an issue on one of the pages, and we can't always determine that. I just say if you have time and you are using Arial 10 and you're having trouble pinpointing or how to do that, call IT help. But just realize it does take a little bit of time to do that. So it really depends on how much time you have and what you're willing to do.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, so much. And thank you all for joining us today. That's our time now. Thank you again for joining us today. Take care and have a wonderful rest of the day.